Hello, and thank you for joining us today for Joy in Our Town. I'm your host, Kelly Waldire. Have you ever wondered what to eat or about some of these fad diets that you hear about? Today we're going to be answering some questions about nutrition, and we are joined by Jessica Lewis, the founder of Sculpt Your Life, personal training, nutritional counseling, and moving meditation. Right. I'm sorry. Jessica, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Kelly.
So can you give us a little bit of background about yourself and how it is you came to be passionate about teaching other people about nutrition and your own journey?
Absolutely. I actually have a lot more in common with people than what may appear on the surface. I began my life as a very big girl, very, very sedentary. I was actually an art major in college, which means that I really kind of specialized in sitting for protracted periods of time and moving as few muscles as possible. In my early 30s, my weight really ballooned again. I had really turned to food as my stress release almost my whole life, and you can imagine the weight roller coaster that ensued. But when my daughter was about 1, my husband was almost fully disabled at that point, and everything was kind of resting on my shoulders, and my health was really failing. I developed a really hideous case of irritable bowel and hypoglycemia. One night I was bathing her, and again, she was only about 1, and I got so lightheaded I kind of passed out for a couple of moments. And it was just long enough for her not to drown, but long enough for me to get the message that I really needed to make some changes. So the very next day, actually, I started exercising for the first time in my life. And the weight just kind of fell off me. And for a while, I thought, oh, this is the key. It's all about movement. And I felt very expert. And I thought, I'm just going to learn how to be a fitness expert. And but I didn't realize at that point how important nutrition is. And it was a couple years before I began to realize that I still don't always feel very good. Through real effort and sort of white-knuckling my way through it, I can sort of move my way through anything, but I still don't feel all that great. So that's when I started studying nutrition, and it was a few more years after that that I decided I wanted to do this for a living, and went out and got certified.
So really, for people to live, a well-rounded life where they are feeling good and they're still active, it's more than just doing the physical activity, the fitness side of things. We often look at that for losing weight, but the nutrition is a huge part of that.
It is a huge thing, and we're at a really strange place in our society now where we really honor these fit bodies, and we don't really think about how about 70% of our health is related to what we put in our mouths, and our bodies are like ecosystems. They're certainly not like machines, and that's a very popular statement out there in the health and fitness world. But our bodies are like ecosystems, and when you put a pebble into the pond, you're going to have ripples. So there can be positive ripples, there can be negative ripples. Nutrition is a massive aspect of your health.
Do you find that the average person that you encounter in your daily life has a good understanding of what is nutritious, what nutrition means, and what kind of foods they should be eating?
Not at all. Here's the problem. I mean, we only have about 5 big food manufacturers in this country now. It seems insane. We think we walk into a grocery store and we think we're faced with all of this variety, when the truth is there's only 5 pockets that every one of our pennies is going into, and they're just sort of clawing over each other to get every single one of your pennies. And most of what most people know, even very educated people, even doctors who very infrequently have any kind of nutrition training whatsoever, most of what we think we know about high-quality nutrition is what we have been told to know. And there's a very long money trail all the way back to why we're told to know that. So most people have very little understanding of true nutrition. It's a shame.
So you have been certified, so you have gone and studied this specifically. How important is it for a person who, is interested in being proactive in this area to find someone who does know what they're talking about instead of just, say, maybe reading an article on the internet?
Well, it's hugely important. It's bigger than I can even really express. But there's 2 ways that I want to answer that question. The first thing is, it's very important to speak to somebody who's at least as qualified as I when it comes to nutrition. But one thing that distinguishes me from a lot of other health and fitness professionals in the world, and certainly all other health and fitness professionals in this immediate area, is I'm also a master personal trainer, and I'm also an accredited Tai Chi Cha instructor. So I look at the way the whole body works together. Again, like a big bowl of spaghetti. You know, you can't really separate fitness from nutrition, from the stresses that we have every day, and our way to offload that. So it's very important that you speak to somebody who's certified, but it's also important that you speak to somebody who's at least qualified in functional medicine or integrative medicine, or has some concept of the body as a holistic unit.
Okay, so not everybody who's giving out nutritional advice, what you're saying, is really doing so with the health of the body as their mindset.
That's true. That's true. I know a number of really high-level, incredibly accomplished, well-respected doctors, internists, cardiologists, specialists that have told me the only time they were ever offered nutrition was as an optional class in medical school, and they're certainly never required to have any kind of continuing ed. And most of the time when you go to a doctor, or even sometimes when you go see a registered dietitian, they're going to look at you as if you're the piece of paper with high LDLs or an elevated A1C. So it's very, very important that you talk to somebody that's going to look at the whole thing. A lot of times I'll have somebody coming in to see me, and I can tell right away that it's kind of what's eating them, not what they're eating. So we have to look at all different aspects of the personality, why they eat what they eat, as well as what they're eating.
In your experience, what should a balanced meal really look like for a person?
Well, when I'm working with a client or when I'm teaching a class, I get a lot more specific about, you know, what are the healthy proteins, the healthy fats, the healthy carbohydrates. But when you boil it all down, what it really comes down to is every time you eat a meal or a snack, there has to be some combination that works for you of healthy proteins, healthy fats, and healthy carbohydrates. Whenever you're missing one of the big macronutrients, some part of your body is going to be starving and seeking that thing. So it's just very important that you always have the 3 macronutrients on your plate. You
mentioned that they really need to find that combination that works for them. Mm-hmm. How does somebody go about doing that?
Well, it depends on a lot of things. I'm not as fit as I used to be, but it's true that I do have more muscle than a lot of women in their mid-50s. So in order to slow down the way my body burns up carbohydrates, I actually eat a little bit more fat than most people would. In the fitness world, there's a long-standing sort of undercurrent that you should eat a ton of protein in order to maintain your muscles. And that may or may not be true. Some people just really function a lot better with a vegetarian diet. But that's one of the things that I work with somebody is trying to figure out exactly what their good balance is. On the other hand, one of the things that people find very liberating about working with me is that much less often than most other nutrition professionals am I going to focus on grams, calories, cups, serving sizes. They begin to get a real feel for what their body needs and what they're craving, when they're hungry, when they're full. I teach them to be a lot more mindful about what they're eating than anything else.
So is this the kind of thing where somebody could take their specific needs and sit down with a person who can kind of craft a plan for them, mm-hmm. and then they can go and they can implement that themselves? It's not something where you need to continually have guidance.
I'm glad you brought that up. That's really great, because I actually do have a goal that all my clients should fly free, little birdie. I really don't want to be working with them forever. So usually, actually, when I'm working with somebody nutritionally, we typically only have about 3 or 4 or 5 sessions, and then they're good to go. They have all the information that they need to go out and live their life sustainably. They don't need to be with me constantly.
Can we talk about a few of the foods that you might recommend in general? I mean, I know you can't get into specifics because everybody is unique, mm-hmm. but a few of the foods that maybe you'd focus on or recommend more frequently for people?
more than anything, I probably spend 90% of my time, my coaching time, talking about the value of vegetables and fruits. This may blow your mind. Did you know that every major World Health Organization, including the World Health Organization, now recommends that we eat somewhere between 9 and 13 servings of fresh, whole, healthy produce every day?
Every day.
Every day, just to maintain our health.
Wow.
So if you're ill, it could even benefit you to eat more. Most people don't even come close to that. So I spent a lot of time talking about the value of vegetables and fruits. Nobody ever got overweight or sick from eating too many carrots.
I was like, can you eat too many carrots?
No, you cannot.
So you don't really have to count calories and
No.
worry about your macronutrients and all of those things if you're really focusing on produce. Is that the idea?
Well, I do give a little bit more counseling than that, but that is the one thing that I feel like I'm just harping on all the time, because there are so many high-quality medical journal studies that have shown that eating more vegetables and fruits may be the one key towards improving your health. You're blowing the amount of nutrients and vitamins through the roof that you're taking in, and you're taking in far less calories. So that is definitely one of the keys to a very healthy life.
Let's talk about a few of these, perhaps fad diets, you know, these trends that we see, and especially now with social media and the internet and everything can just kind of go around the world so quickly. You know, people try these things, but not all of them are necessarily good for you.
Right.
Low carb is super popular.
Yeah.
And I mean, just in your experience, how do you work with clients, and do you implement low carb, or do you not recommend that, or what's your take?
My take on nutrition is always to focus on whole food, whole food. Dr. Atkins in the 40s and 50s did research that was really groundbreaking, and he actually advocated a diet that was far more akin to a paleo approach than anything else. But you know, Americans, we have this tendency to take something and just kind of morph it off into the stratosphere. So what has happened over the course of time is that low-carb diets or Atkins diets look a little bit more like you know, putting a pat of butter on top of a piece of steak and eating a lot of pseudo foods that simply don't exist in nature anymore. So that's my biggest problem with a lot of low-carb diets, is that they're full of foods that don't even exist in nature.
What about some of these diets where you're eliminating an entire food group, such as gluten-free or dairy-free? Do you ever advocate those approaches?
The dairy conversation is a big one.
Maybe not enough time today.
Probably not enough time today. We know for a fact, though, that we're not intended to eat the hormones and the antibiotics that are in dairy products and beef that's raised in the most conventional ways today. So that's a big conversation. The gluten-free issue, that's becoming a really huge catchphrase. I think that one of the reasons why so many people are becoming gluten sensitive is because wheat is so very easy to genetically engineer and over-process. So we're creating, again, all these foods that don't exist in nature, and our digestive tracts are becoming increasingly alarmed all the time. So again, I'm constantly working with clients to incorporate as many whole, healthy foods that are as close to their original packaging as possible every day, rather than these pseudo foods. And vegetables are naturally gluten-free, so the more you eat, the less gluten you're eating. You know?
There you go. We are almost out of time for today, but I really quickly wanted to touch on a food diary and just what it is and how important this is as a tool for your clients.
I think it's a really important tool. Almost everybody should keep a diary from time to time, because it's really easy to lose track of what you're doing and why you're doing it. So I've developed a diary that's more like a glimpse of a lifestyle than anything else. It even has scales on it and places where they can write notes for what they were feeling right before they decided they were hungry, how full or how satisfied they were after their meal, or how quickly that meal kind of burned up. It gives me a place to look at how much sleep they're getting, what kind of supplements they're taking, whether or not they're hydrated enough, what kind of exercise or relaxation techniques they're using, whether or not they're fueling that work properly before and after. So I think food diaries are really important, and they help you stay mindful of what you're doing.
It sounds like you put a lot of work into this, and there's a lot that goes into a well-balanced diet in people's life. Thank you so much for sharing with us. We are out of time for today.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope you learned something, and we'll see you next time on Joy in Our Town.